Hello students, you are welcome to session 3 of Unit 6, and in this session we will be looking at classroom test. My name is Patrick Ejay. Now at the end of this session, you should be able to explain teacher-made test and state and explain some of the pitfalls associated with teacher-made test. Now let's look at classroom test. So the classroom test can be an achievement test or a performance test, and any other type of test like practical test that is prepared by the teacher for his specific class and purpose based on what he has taught. So anytime it comes to classroom test, there is no predefined way of providing this kind of test. It is always dependent on the purpose for which the teacher is designing the test for. And he designs the test in order to measure what he or she has taught in the classroom. And the development of good questions or items writing for the purpose of classroom test cannot be taken for granted. So because you design these test items to measure specific or to help you assess how well your learners understood the various concepts you taught, you design this kind of test for a specific class. Whenever you are writing the items, care must be taken so that at the end of the day, what the test items were intended to do, they can do it for you as a teacher. And so development of good questions or items must follow a number of principles, without which no one can guarantee that the responses given to the test will be relevant and consistent. So there should be some principles that you as a teacher, anytime you are designing your classroom test, you follow so that you can determine how relevant the test items are to in helping you to achieve your lesson objectives. But the problem is that teachers are faced with several problems when it comes to evaluating student learning outcomes. So anytime we want to evaluate the learning outcomes of our learners in the classroom, that is a big challenge to most teachers. And the teacher is expected to observe students in the class, workshop, laboratory, field of play, and rate their activities under these varied conditions. And so the teacher is required to correct and grade students' assignments and homeworks as well. So all these activities sometimes become problem to a teacher. What score should I give to the learner? To what extent must the learner be able to exhibit this characteristic before I can assign this kind of score to the learner? And so this sometimes become a problem anytime teachers want to use the classroom test. The teacher is also expected to decide on the fitness of their students for promotion on the basis of continuous assessment exercises, end of term examinations, cumulative results, and promotion examination given towards the end of the school year. So before the learner can move from one level to another level, it is based on their exercises. It is based on the performance in their end of term exams. And here lies the case. The teacher also has a problem when it comes to evaluating learners. And so as a teacher, once you know that your assessment result is what will determine as to whether the learner will be promoted or not, then you must also take your assessment practices. Very important, and you should become familiar with the planning, construction, and administration of good quality tests. But what are some of the drawbacks in teacher-made tests? What are some of the pitfalls in teacher-made tests? So most of teacher-made tests are not appropriate to the different levels of learning outcomes. So when you check the various objectives that were stated for the lesson, and you look at the kind of questions that has been asked, then you realize that the questions that are provided are not appropriate to measure those objectives that were stated. Another pitfall is that many of the test exercises fail to measure what they are supposed to measure. In other words, most of the test items are not valid. And so the test was supposed to measure, let's say, students' ability to determine or calibrate an instrument, students' ability to use a particular instrument to take reading. These were the objectives of the lesson. But when it comes to the test that will be given to the learner, you realize that the test item is measuring a different thing. So we will see that the test items were not valid. And some classroom tests do not also cover comprehensively the topics taught. So the teacher will teach about 5 topics and set exams on just 2 of the topics. And even on the 2 topics, you realize that the teacher will only set some knowledge questions. And understand that anytime it comes to knowledge questions, these are the lowest level of cognitive objectives. And so once the questions are only on knowledge, you realize that comprehensively it does not cover what has been taught, and it becomes very difficult for you to make use of such a test to make a decision concerning the student's learning. You cannot just use the outcome from such a test to take a decision concerning your students, because they were lacking a whole lot of things that were supposed to be considered. And most tests that are being prepared by teachers also lack clarification in the wordings. So some of the questions are ambiguous. And anytime they are given to the learners, you realize that because of the ambiguity in the question, students do not know exactly what the question is looking out for. And this clarification too, once the question lacks clarification, then it means that the student is going to answer the question based on how he or she understands the questions. And most teacher-made tests also fail item analysis tests. What do we mean by failing item analysis tests? They fail to discriminate properly. They fail to let us know the average student, the higher achiever, and the lower achiever, because all the questions can be said that they are questions for the low achievers. And once you do this, you realize that all the, whether low achiever, average achiever, or high achiever, they are all going to score. But a good test item should be the one that can discriminate among the high achievers, the average, and the low achievers. So anytime they set such questions, you realize that it fails the test of item analysis. It is unable to discriminate among the various kinds of students that we have in the classroom. Now, students, in this session, we looked at teacher-made tests as well as some of the pitfalls to teacher-made tests. Now, as we bring the session to an end, let us take this question as a take-home. State and briefly explain 4 pitfalls in teacher-made tests. Students, I hope you enjoyed the session on this unit,